Hey, everybody. Welcome to playoff week one preview time here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. March 3rd is the very frequent start of head-to-head playoffs in fantasy sports. It's what we talked about doing here on this show. It's what I know our good buddy Josh talked about on Locked On. It's generally like kind of the suggested time if you're not willing to go earlier. Basically, this is kind of where you end up. So this is a pretty damn important week, and we have to start treating our weekly previews a little bit differently. We're going to dive straight into the sit-start decisions for those of you in traditional weekly leagues, which I maintain are a little bit dumb, but I know that they're still out there, so we're going to break it down as we can. Anybody that's got a tag here on Yahoo, we're just going to go through like the top 125, and if anybody's got a red tag of any size, we're going to talk about it. Wemby and Anthony Davis, obviously, you're not starting those guys. Luka, he's a go. Vooch, I think you got to bench him. He's already been ruled out for the Sunday game, meaning you can't afford to take a 0 during a playoff week, and Vooch would only have a 3-gamer anyway. So even if he misses one, you really start to hamstring yourself. Josh Hart is a yes. LeBron is a yes. Anthony Edwards is an interesting one. He missed their last game due to technical foul points, but he also is dealing with an actual injury on top of it. They have a game on Sunday that hasn't started yet as of the time of us recording this. If he plays in that game on Sunday, that makes the choice a much, much easier. I'm probably starting Anthony Edwards in most formats simply because they've got a 4-game week, and I just don't think he's going to sit that long. Domantas Sabonis got hurt on Saturday night. He becomes a no now. The expectation is that he's probably going to miss more than one game, possibly more than a week, so you just can't drop him into your lineup. And by the way, this does kind of pull into question. And I get it. Like, there's always going to be examples on both sides. But all I hear about leading up to the season is like, oh, you got to draft only guys that are always durable. But you can get crushed with an injury at the worst possible time, no matter what you do. You just want to try to take whatever precautions you can and go from there. And yes, that's right. I am doing chapstick in the middle of a video podcast. I don't care. I am what I am. You guys are used to it by now. Kristaps Porzingis, I think, is one of the hardest decisions to make for this coming week. He already is ruled out for the game on Sunday morning for Boston. He hasn't played in a few days. They don't play again until Wednesday as part of a back-to-back. I would be inclined to sit Porzingis because even if he is healthy, it feels like your best-case scenario for this coming week is a 2-gamer, so I'm probably putting him on my bench. Donovan Mitchell ruled out for rest for the Cavaliers game on Sunday. I think the expectation they have is that they can win that game over Portland without him. You might start to see the Cavs do that in other games also, but obviously Mitchell is a start in all formats, and you just hope for the best. Chet Holmgren also ruled out due to rest for Oklahoma City. This is the front end of a back-to-back, and actually their schedule does this a couple of times. 3 weeks in a row, they go Sunday, Monday, last week, this week, and next week. But what we don't know is which game he's going to miss. Because, again, OKC's way out in front of everybody. They're going to start giving guys some days off. It's going to be annoying, but at least with Chet, we kind of know it's coming. 3 games would be the low watermark for this coming week for Holmgren. 4 would be a good one. So, to me, he's a start. Norman Powell is a start. He just got ruled in for the Clippers game against the Lakers on Sunday. I don't know if he plays in their back-to-back, but you're going to get at least 3 games out of him, provided he doesn't re-aggravate something on Sunday this coming week. So, Powell is a start. John Collins is impossible at this point. He's ruled out as part of a back-to-back, but he's missed games that aren't back-to-backs, and Utah plays Washington in the middle of this week, so that's a game that's going to be a tank-off. They're going to have to sort of make sure that they lose it. I think we might be looking at a 2-game week for Collins, and I know he's been really good when he's been in, but I just don't know if I can do it. Like, I think he probably plays about 26, 27 minutes even when he's in, and it feels like you could find a 4-game week that will basically match him in a 2-gamer, and it covers you in case he misses any additional games and you get nothing. So I'd be leaning towards no on John Collins because he's part of the Utah varsity squad. But I get it. If you don't have another option, you can just close your eyes and pray. Desmond Bane, I'm probably starting. It seems like, and, you can see the note here got downgraded to out, but you can also see that Bane played in their previous whatever number of ball games and played big minutes in them. So it kind of felt like Memphis was just trying to buy him a little bit of time as part of a back-to-back that they then lost. Does that mean that Bane is going to sit out future back-to-backs? I don't know. The good news here on Bane is that Memphis plays on Monday. So you'll get more information on it's tomorrow, as of us. We're recording this on Sunday afternoon or morning, actually, for me, Pacific time. You'll know if Bane is in the Grizzlies game against the Hawks. If he's in, you got an easy call. If he's out, you probably don't play him. You just sort of do the mirroring. We call it Mirror Monday. Walker Kessler, he's going to sit out back-to-backs. We've talked about this. So Utah, for playoff guys, he's missing the Sunday game against the Pelicans, so he's probably going to play in the Monday game, meaning you're going to get at least 3 games out of Walker, and you might get 4. So to me, he's a start. And then obviously Joel Embiid is out for the year, so he's someone you leave on your bench. Before we get to the next bunch of players, I want to remind you guys that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting here in the calendar year 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-timer, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion, boasting the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA and college basketball to the NHL and USC. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. They've got every three-pointer. They've got every hat trick. They've got every grand slam. They've got every touchdown. BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Give them a shot, man. Give them a shot. Have some fun. In moderation. You can do fine, but you can't be crazy. Don't get nuts or the whole thing's going to come down around you. That's how things go sour. And I worked as a sports handicapper for a couple of years. Many of you guys remember me talking about this. You just got to stay within yourself, set a number of units that you're playing with, what the unit value is, an actual dollar amount, and you'll be okay. You just have to stay within yourself. But give them a look. They're one of our amazing partners. They're the reason we can do all this. DeJounte Murray is obviously out. Austin Reeves is kind of a tough one. He exited the Lakers-Clippers game on Friday with soft tissue tightness, soreness, but the MRI came back clean. So that's the good news on Reeves. The bad news is the Lakers play on Sunday, and so if he's ruled out, which my expectation is that he won't play in this game, it kind of feels a little dumb. I know the Lakers want to rack up wins, and they want to get as many games under their belt with all 3 of their ball handlers together as they can, just to try to get as much chemistry as possible before the playoffs start. But also, they're going to want Austin Reeves when the playoffs start. And if you blow out a calf, that could ruin everything. That could take him out through the playoffs. So I think he probably sits on Sunday. I guess we'll know in the next, 4 or 5 hours. But I think you just mirror what you see on Sunday. So it's, facsimile Sunday. Whatever Austin Reeves is on Sunday is what you do, because it's only a 3-game week. If he sits out Sunday, he might sit out Tuesday. If you're looking at a 2-game week, then you're really up a creek. What if he misses another one? What if they hold him out for an entire week? Then you're doomed. So you got to play it safe there. If he sits out Sunday, you can't do it. And I know he's been really good, but that's how you got to roll. Jordan Poole is a tough one because the Wizards are in tank mode. Go mirror Monday on him. They've got a game in Miami. First thing, actually, is one of the first games on the card. So you'll get a Jordan Poole update before that game. If he's in, you could play him. It's only a 3-game week, so even if you don't play him, you're not missing a ton because he's been very good this season. But your team would survive if you benched him and you got 3 games out of him. But again, you'll know by Monday. Freddie VanVleet came back and re-aggravated his ankle. He stepped on an official's foot. Can you believe it? That's a cursed moment. And it really sucks because Houston was going into a great scheduling run. They've got 8 games over 13 days starting on Monday. But I've got to believe that VanVleet sits out at least one of this back-to-back. He might miss the entire week. Mirror Monday on Freddie VanVleet. If you miss out on 3 games of him, your team will be okay. And that, again, is in this hypothetical where he does not play on Monday. Obviously, if VanVleet plays on Monday, then you're kind of, again, barring another injury, you're basically guaranteed a 3-game week at that point. Can't believe that, though. How stupid. Jimmy Butler got ruled out of their last ballgame, Warriors' last ballgame, pretty early, so I think you got to leave him on the pine. Another shame because Golden State does have a good schedule, unless he gets ruled in for Monday. So mirror Monday on Jimmy Butler. Bradley Beal is probably more of a mirror Sunday. He did get upgraded to questionable for their game against the Timberwolves. the Suns are finally out of this 5 games in 7 days stretch and the schedule gets pretty light. If he doesn't play on Sunday, then you're looking at Tuesday against the Clippers as the next possible return date for Beal. 3 games out of Bradley would be a pretty good week. He's been solid since moving back into the starting 5. But again, you cannot risk only getting a 2-game week or worse. So if he doesn't play on Sunday, you got to leave him on your pine. Lauri Markkanen, I mean, same thing. You can go mirror Sunday on him. I would say basically you're assuming he's not playing, and I think he's been ruled out for the Sunday game. So Markkanen, you got to keep on your bench. I hadn't heard anything about Josh Giddey, but he's got a game time decision tag. So, mirror Sunday, I guess, on Josh Giddey. Ayo Dosunmu had shoulder surgery, so he's out for a while, which, again, it's just freeing up all kinds of playing time for Lonzo Ball and Kevin Huerter, and Giddey's been going big. I'm in. I think you got to start him. I haven't heard anything else. Suggs is out for the year. Don't play him. Kobe White, start him. Again, there's just a lot of stuff right now in Chicago. PJ Washington, I think you got to sit. Dallas does play on Monday, so I guess it's possible he could pop up as a go, but re-aggravated his ankle on Saturday. It feels like that would be kind of surprising to see him back as soon as tomorrow, but I guess you never know. So mirror Monday on PJ Washington as well. Rudy Gobert is just gone. He's vanished. I assume we'll see him at some point, but I don't know when. They don't play on Monday, which sucks, so you're not going to get a report on Gobert, and you're going to have a lock happen before you have to make a call, but he hasn't played in a week and change, so you got to leave him on your pine. Gafford obviously out. Andrew Wiggins is just not good enough to take a shot on, but Miami plays on Monday, so you get an opportunity to mirror there as well. Herb Jones is out for the year, so he's a no. Cam Thomas sat out Brooklyn's second half of their back-to-back. It's only a 3-game week, and his minutes were, 21 in his first game since coming off the IL? I think you got to sit Cam Thomas in a weekly league, unless you're in some crazy volume type league where he'll take 20 shots in 23 minutes. It's just 9-cat-wise, it's not going to be very good. Derek Lively's a no. John Morant is a yes. Bobby Portis is a no. Robert Williams is a no. Rui Hachimura is a no. Julius Randle is a yes. He's back for Minnesota. He will make his return today, Sunday, and then you'll get at least 3 games out of him this coming week. Obviously, far better in punt format. I don't want anything to do with Julius Randle in straight 9-cap, but if you have him on your team and he's part of how you built your team, you should get a full week out of him. Jeremy Grant, I pray that you just don't have to rely on Jeremy Grant, but you can mirror Monday him. They've got a game today he could get ruled out for, but they've got another one tomorrow, so Portland a pretty damn good schedule. Like, I can't stand Jeremy Grant, but again, you might have him. Drew Holiday is out for we don't know how long. I think they call it mallet finger. I haven't Googled that, but it sounds gross. Ayo Dosunmu is a no, and I don't know that we need to go any farther than that. Basically, anybody that's even questionable. Colin Sexton, I guess, would be like the closest thing here. He's sitting out Sunday, mostly so that he can play on Monday, but his minutes haven't ramped up yet. So I hope, have a better option than a minute-restricted Colin Sexton for this coming week. But if you don't, you're probably going to get 3 games out of him. And it could be worse, I guess. Okay, that's your weekly decision stuff. Let's move over to the streaming board, everybody's favorite part of the weekly show. I got to make sure we're going full screen here so you guys have a nice look at it. And there we go. All right. Full screen mode for week 20. So here's the thing, guys. And gals. I use guys as a multi-gendered term. There are no 2-week teams in week 20. Isn't that something? Remember? Oh, by the way, I was thinking about this while I was doing some like core exercises on the ground because I have a bad back and I did PT when I was like 19, and they told me if I didn't exercise my core every day, my back was going to go out. I was on the ground doing some core exercises, and it occurred to me, how many times did we all think about whether or not we would draft Luka Doncic because of the Mavericks' 2-game playoff schedule? Or the fact that they have a 2-game week. Can you believe it? Not a Maverick. I didn't even think about that when he got traded, but now he's on this Lakers team that has, look at this stretch here, where they go 6 times in 8 days. Ridiculous. Now, some of that was because of a makeup game, but Luka went from one of the worst playoff schedules. Now, this coming week, it's only a 3-gamer, but one of the best after that. Crazy. In any event, here's the thing. So there are no 2-game weeks, no 2-game teams this week. You've got a bunch of 3s, you got a bunch of 4s. It's split pretty close to down the middle. And you guys can see on this board, there are a lot of like cool green stretches here of teams that are in the midst of a 5 and 7, but none that actually start on Monday. The only one that does is Brooklyn next week. So just put that in the back of your mind, your Rolodex for possible moves. That's March 10th though, and that's part of an overload day. So it might not even help you out as much as it seems like it. This week is broken down into kind of a front half and a back half. And that's the only way to do it when you don't have really obvious teams to abandon ship on. So I've tried to color code it as like dark brown or dark yellow because none of these teams is that bad of a schedule. Denver's on my board here as an example. They still have 3 games this week and they roll into a 5 and 7 that starts on Sunday, but there are little pockets of time where they're not as good. So you guys know how I like to do this. I like to look at the bad scheduling spots, start with bad schedule week, but we don't really have that. So instead, we're going to jump right over that to bad schedule chunks, and then how do we pivot away from those? On the weekly show, which is what this is, we don't typically get into the actual names to stream because so many guys get ruled in and out day of that trying to predict who you should pick up on Wednesday or Thursday is a fool's errand right now. We will, however, as I've been talking about on a lot of our shows, have a streaming show every single day coming up. That's at least the goal, is to have one every single day, including weekends, where we give you the names of players to stream, and it'll be just like a quick 10 to 15-minute episode, hopefully every day, that gives you the best little schedule pockets and who to target based on who we know is in and who is out as of, probably 4 to 5 hours before game time on those days. And stuff could still change after that, but we're going to do our best. But on these weekly shows, we're going to focus more on the sort of macro, as in what teams to look at depending on what you're trying to do. First and foremost, let me lay out my main playoff streaming strategic note, which is you should be streaming at least half the number of slots as weekly moves you have. So if you have 4 weekly moves, which is the default in Yahoo, you should be streaming at least 2 slots on your roster. And with proper long streaming, this week is a little bit harder there. You can often go as high as 3 or even all 4. It has to be the perfect week for you to pull off a 4. Again, like we've talked about it in math constants before, where n is the number of, or variables, where n is the number of weekly moves you have. I expect you to have n divided by 2 plus 1 or more. Yes, you guys are hearing alarms going off during the show. I have things that I'm trying to remember to do. Ignore that. Again, I can't do much with it. So second thing. So that's how many moves you should, or how many slots you should be streaming. Second playoff streaming tenet. If you have a player who is a game time call that gets ruled out, and this player is not inside your top basically 60 or 70, you probably need to cut that player to eliminate zeros. Especially this week, because first of all, it's the quarterfinals for fantasy playoffs, meaning you're a long way from in the money. You got a long way to go, and if you get wiped out here, you're like, you eliminate the opportunity for good fortune to swing your direction. But perhaps more importantly, when we're talking about like eliminating the zeros, that's something you should be using a weekly move on. Zeros will break you in the fantasy playoffs. And I know what you're thinking, Dan, I don't want to drop a guy who I've relied on all season long, and then they come back in 5 days and my opponent picks him up. I promise you that the good that you derive out of dropping a guy getting a 0 And I don't have a good example right now. We won't potentially know one until Monday, right before the games start tomorrow. But let's say that, like, it needs to be someone a little more fringy, like Brandon Pajemski, who's a much easier decision. Golden State has a great schedule this week. You may have Brandon Pajemski on your roster, and you might be thinking, awesome, the Warriors start this week with a back-to-back. They've got 4 games the first 6 days. I could hold all the way through Saturday if I wanted to. Oh, no, he gets ruled out. Late scratch on Monday. You drop him. You want to pick up somebody who also has 4 games over that span. But what if he misses both halves of the back-to-back? And again, there's no bad news on Brandon Pajemski. This is completely pulled out of the sky. I'm just taking him as an example of like top 100 type of guy. Maybe not quite. Maybe consider someone a tiny bit better. That gets ruled out, and you just can't afford. Like, what if they're going to miss 2 or 3 games? What if you cost yourself 3 games of production by sitting on a guy who's getting ruled out constantly? Bradley Beal might be a better example of that. He's questionable for their game on Sunday, as we talked about already. But what if you hold on to him through Tuesday and he gets ruled out for that ball game? That's probably a guy you end up having to drop and look for someone who has 4 games going after that instead of what you might get is 1 or 2. So be cutthroat. And we'll talk about this stuff like on our streaming shows as we work our way through the week. But that's a key element to how you use your moves. You also need to be willing to use your moves, I believe, during the fantasy playoffs a little bit earlier in the week. I love trying to hold them as long as possible, but sometimes you got to get, like, again, if there's somebody injured, sitting on them the entire week ends up costing you. You have to be a little bit more aggressive, and sometimes you're going to get stuck with no moves left on Friday, and you just kind of have to cross your fingers and close your eyes and hope that your team stays healthy for 2.5 days. It happens during the playoffs, but you just can't sit on zeros. It's less prevalent in week 20, which is what we're dealing with right now, than it is in week 22. But it's also possible that you might have to use all 4 of your weekly moves on guys getting hurt. If you have to use a move on a guy that's giving you zeros, drop the number of streaming slots on your team because that slot now becomes a streaming slot. So if you thought you were going to stream 3 slots and you have to drop an injured guy, you better only be streaming 2 because you just got your 3rd. Someone else on your team is just going to have to make it through the week. Your 3rd to worst player from previously is going to last the week. So make those adjustments to your strategy based on the health of your team. Now, let's say you're coming into week 20 with a mostly healthy ball club. How do you work your way through this coming week? There are 4 teams that start the week with a really good schedule. Atlanta, Golden State, Houston, and Philadelphia. Those 4 teams go back-to-back on Monday, Tuesday, and all 4 of them play 3 games in 4 nights. Only Philly, of those 4 teams, doesn't go 4 times in 6 nights. How does that change your strategy with this stuff? Well, I would say for Atlanta, Golden State, and Houston, probably plan on holding whoever your pickup is all the way through their game on Saturday and using your next move on that slot on Sunday. Which, by the way, there are 3 teams that start a 5-game and 7-day stretch on Sunday, and I've color-coded them light blue on this streaming grid, which, by the way, open it up, you jerks. Click on the link in the show description for the Dan's Mega Google Sheet, or whatever the hell I called it, and navigate over to the streaming calendar tab and scroll to week 20, and you can see where I've marked things off in blue. The light blue markers in this week denote changeover days. That's here, go to this team here. If you go Philadelphia, I would probably recommend, well, it depends on who you pick up, but like you could make the next move on Wednesday. You could make the next move on Friday. I would be okay with either of those. I don't think that anybody streaming on Philly is going to be good enough to hold all the way through Sunday. But if you did, they're actually in a really good scheduling spot. They go 6 times in 9 days starting on Sundays. So the 76ers actually have a pretty heavy schedule coming up. They go, 9 times over 15 days? That's pretty good. So you either go 3 with Philly or you go 15 with Philly. I know it's crazy, but there really isn't an in-between there. With the other ones, you probably don't extend it much beyond, like, look at Atlanta here on the board. They go every other day, including the overload day on Monday. I don't know who you're picking up on Atlanta that you're so excited about. Maybe like Karis LeVert, something like that. You probably abandon ship on Sunday because you can just do better. You can do better, and there's probably going to be a better option out there. But again, if someone else on your team gets hurt, holding on to a Hawk, rolling through next week, it's not the end of the world. It's another 4-gamer. Golden State, they're the exception here because they go like through Monday of next week, I guess is okay. But again, that's an overload day. So Warriors, I would almost definitely get off on Sunday because they roll into kind of a bad schedule right there. 1 game over 4 days. Houston, you could kind of do the same thing as Atlanta. If you wanted to abandon ship on Sunday and you had an extra move to use, go for it. If not, they have a good schedule next week also. So those are your options to start this coming week in terms of the good side. We didn't really talk about the bad side. Teams that have a poor schedule to start this week are Denver. They go 1 time over 4 days. They have 2 games over 6 days to start this week before they pivot into a good schedule. Phoenix, same thing. 2 games over 6 days to start the week. San Antonio, 2 games over 6 days to start the week. Toronto, 1 game over 4. So if you have streaming guys on Toronto, San Antonio, Phoenix, or Denver to start the week, that's the ones where you want to pivot off to one of these teams we just talked about, like Atlanta, Golden State, Houston, or Philadelphia. Because think of it from this perspective. Even if you only made this move for 4 days, it's still a big win. If you made it for 6 days, Denver has 2 games over their next 6 days. Golden State has 4. Atlanta has 4. Houston has 4. You're gaining 2 games played over those 6 days, and then you pivot off of them. You can go back to Denver if you wanted to because their schedule gets really good. Toronto's a little different. That's one where you just make the move for 4 days, and then you could come back if you wanted to because their schedule does get better starting on Friday. Then they go 6 times in, is that 9? No, that's 7 times in 11 days. So Toronto's schedule gets a little bit better. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. But same thing with Phoenix, same thing with San Antonio. You go from 2 games over 6 days to 4 games over 6 days. That's a big, big games played win. So those are your bad schedules to start the week. There are a couple of teams. New York is one of them, is iffy. Washington is the other, that have a poorer schedule as the week goes on. The Knicks, you can hold all the way through Friday. They have three games the first 5 days of this week, but then they go into a prolonged poor schedule. The Knicks actually have only 2 games over the next 7 days after that game against the Clippers on Friday. One of them is on an overload Monday next week also, so you might not even be able to play a streaming guy there. So the Knicks, you got to get abandon ship on Saturday of this week. And the Wizards abandon ship on Thursday. My brain got crisscrossed for a second there. So New York, you can hang on a little bit longer. You abandon ship after their game on Friday. Washington, you abandon ship after their game on Wednesday. So it's a little bit of a tweak there. Now for the Wizards, it's just a 4-day deal. They got 1 game over 4 days to end this week. Then they roll back into a better schedule to start next week. So if you wanted to go back to them, you could. But there are spots, as we've talked about before, you just sort of compare and contrast. What is my move here? And the answer is, well, there isn't a great one. But you could go to New York that has that back-to-back and then abandon ship there. You just got to find somebody that has more than 1 game over those 4 days, unless your Wizard is like a world beater, and I don't know that they have any. But it does give you an option with Washington to go to one of these teams that has a better schedule that starts maybe not necessarily on Thursday, because as you can see, there just aren't that many. But you could go to, I don't know, what was a good team here? Brooklyn. You want to go to Brooklyn on Thursday. That's got 2 games to finish this week and then 5 next week. It's kind of an opportunity if you have the Wizard to get a jump on next week. Add 1 game this week, but add another one next week. So that's the Wizard side. That one's a little bit more finicky than New York, where it's much more cut and dry. You hold through Friday, and then you get the hell out. Because look how bad this schedule is. Not only is it 2 games over 7 days, but they only have 2 games over the 4 days after that. So it's 4 games over 11 days. We just talked about a team that has 7 games over 11. Like, that's a great opportunity to add 2, 3, 4 games played over these types of stretches. So those are your poor schedules towards the back. It's not even back half with New York. It's the very end, frankly, of this week with New York. And you could, pivot to New Orleans if you wanted to there. They've got a back-to-back to end the week. You could go to Detroit. They've got a back-to-back to end the week. There's some pretty good options if you ride New York through Friday. Or do you just take one extra game this week and roll into a better schedule next week? So you have a lot of options there. Milwaukee, New Orleans. New Orleans, I already mentioned. Milwaukee is also on the board as a team that finishes this week strong. But with New York, you can't hang on because that damn Monday is such a critical bad one. And think about it from this perspective: Milwaukee, New Orleans, who we just talked about, these teams that have a back-to-back to end this week, they skip over the overload day on Monday. So you're getting a great end to this week. Detroit, a good example of that, since they have this. Detroit, I should probably have highlighted because they've got kind of a weird pocket in the middle, but it's a 4-game week overall, so I don't think that I would get cute with it because they do have this great Saturday, Sunday back-to-back, skip the overload day, play on Tuesday and Thursday of next week, the light days, and it's the same thing with these other teams, Milwaukee, New Orleans, that have the back-to-back to finish this week. So that's probably what you're doing from kind of a macro perspective. Again, gauge your team's health. Try not to use more than 2 moves at the very beginning of the week because you want to make sure you have something in case someone gets hurt, unless someone's hurt on your team to start the week, because that would be a great reason to use a move. But if you're just using a move to try to maximize games played, Denver is an interesting one. I would say Phoenix, San Antonio, and Toronto. Those are the ones where you can turn 1 game over 4 days into 3 games over 4 days. You really get that nice big early week game bump, but don't do more than 2 of those. If you have more than 2 guys on those 4 teams I just mentioned, Toronto, San Antonio, Phoenix, and Denver, you're going to just have to pick one to hold on to. It's you can't make 3 moves on Monday or you're really putting yourself behind the 8 ball. Okay, this show is really, again, just the start of our streaming 6-week sprint. So if you watch this one, it's going to segue into our everyday streaming shows where we talked about all these teams, and then we're going to get into the actual players to potentially target on them. So make sure to check those out. Subscribe to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball so that you don't miss when we drop these shows. They're not going to be the first show of the morning. First show of the morning during the week is going to be the recap show. The second show, because it's better to get a little bit more information midway through the day, is going to be about who to target in streams. We're going to try to do it in 2-day chunks because I know some of you are, and in head-to-head leagues, I really think it's imperative to have day of moves, but I also realize that Yahoo's money leagues are fab budget, so you can't make a move the day of. Your moves have to be with a bid placed overnight. So we'll try to look 1 day ahead. We'll do so tomorrow on Monday's streaming show, we'll look at Monday, and we'll also take a little bit of a look ahead at Tuesday, and we'll just keep pairing them off. The Tuesday show will be Tuesday, Wednesday. And so every day, with the exception of actually this Monday, is going to be covered twice pretty much. But we'll be able to amend our coverage as we get more information on who's playing on any given day. Before you go, guys, make sure to check out our buddies over at UnderdogFantasy.com. Use promo code OLDMAN, OLDMAN, to unlock up to $1,000 in deposit match bonus cash and a free square on your first pick'em card. All you got to do is pick higher or lower on 2 or more players. It's so easy to win, up to 1,000 times your entry fee, and it's fun. You don't need to understand DFS. You don't need to understand lineup construction. You just need to understand 2 players, and it could be points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, first quarter, second quarter, first half, second half. That's just basketball, and they've got it for all sorts of different sports and games. Put them all together. Use the promos as they drop them. Have some fun with us over at UnderdogFantasy.com. Again, promo code OLDMAN, or just click the link in the show description. And that wraps us up. I am Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris over on Twitter. Follow me there, at DANBESBRIS. Old Man Squad on the Blue Sky Network. Hit that like button. I already mentioned to please subscribe, but really seriously do please subscribe here, especially as we make our playoff push, because we're going to be doing some special stuff here to try to get you over the hump. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify and you haven't done it already, drop that 5-star review. We'll be back with you guys first thing on Monday morning with a recap show and midday with our streaming show. With that, I'll see you then.